They say ignorance is bliss, but as a lifelong journalist, I really couldn't disagree more. If there's something shocking to know, I want to know about it, and I want you to know about it too. I'm Peggy Bunker, and I can't wait for you to know it all. This season's focus, do we even know what we're eating? The truth about factory farming. Hey everyone, I'm Peggy Bunker, and welcome to this episode of Know It All. We have talked so much this season about animal activism, about animals and the suffering on factory farms. But what about the farmers? What about the generational farmers who this is the only livelihood they've ever been taught? It's all they know. This is how they support their families. Many of these farmers are stuck in this cycle too, and they want out. Today, I'm going to introduce you to two advocates who are doing that exact thing for other farmers. Tanner Faaborg, who comes from a generational line of pig farmers, has managed to find his way out of the factory farming maze with the incredible help of Megan Hunter, who's Senior Program Specialist for Mercy for Animals. Mercy for Animals put together an incredible program called Transformation, not Transformation, Transformation, and it's helping farmers get out of the toxic business of factory farming. This episode is proof that change is possible, and we are so happy to share this episode with you today. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Tanner Faaborg and Megan Hunter. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us today. I'm thrilled to have you on our podcast, Know It All. And I'd like to introduce, first and foremost, a founder and operator, Tanner Faaborg of 1100 Farm, and also Megan Hunter, Senior Program Specialist for Mercy for Animals, an incredible animal rights organization. Both of you are incredible in your individual spaces, and we're going to talk more about how you came together to create magic. But first, Tanner, I really want to start with you and your story. And before you met Megan and helped have your farm transformed, you grew up in Iowa, beautiful part of the country, beautiful 25-acre farm with your parents. And your family got into pig farming, and it sort of evolved in a way that no longer sat properly with you. And I want to just sort of get the condensed version, if there's a way to summarize your growing up in this beautiful place with your siblings, how it went from being a pig farm to where you are now.
Yeah, I mean, there was kind of a transition before this big transition. And we started out with just growing up, but my parents wanted to have a homesteading lifestyle. And it was diversified, small 25-acre farm. My dad was a welder working for minimum wage, didn't have much money. So kind of lived, everything we had was kind of living up the land just to sustain ourselves, not as a business model. So, we had a big garden, an orchard, pear tree, apple tree. We'd make pear sauce, applesauce, pear applesauce. We'd can things. We had animals. We had, a few pigs, chickens, very connected to kind of the land and the animals. And then the transition happened when Wendell Murphy came knocking on the door, making a tempting offer to my parents. I was about 9 years old.
And let me ask you a question right there, because as you describe that, which it sounds so idyllic, I think so many of us who are so disconnected from where food comes from or even how it grows or how you raise food to eat it, you had a connection to the animals. You named them. You fed them on a daily basis. It wasn't at such a scale that you couldn't connect with them. So they were sort of, were they pets? You always understood them to be food, or what was that connection like?
I mean, every animal really had a name. I mean, there was Spot the pig, and there was Chicky the chicken, and, there was Petey the possum. That was just a pet that we took in. There was all sorts of animals. My first cow, I was in 4-H, so we showed cows and like calves, and my first calf was Curly. That lived, Curly lived her entire life just out in the pasture. And yeah, there's that connection, and we enjoyed the chores. I enjoyed waking up early and going and collecting eggs. We enjoyed the whole family dynamic of, all right, it's time to harvest the pears or the apples. And at the time, I had no idea that we were living off, not much money. I mean, my mom made our clothes. We had a wood burning stove to heat the house. So we would It was just natural. I know this is kind of romanticized now. For me, back then, it was just life. After storms, we'd go collect firewood, and that was kind of the lifestyle. And then things changed when my parents made the decision ultimately to go into factory farming and sign that contract. Contract that's kind of difficult to get out of.
Yeah, that changed everything. I know for sure. Just one last question on that. When it came time to kill one of these animals to eat it, were you guys sad about that? I always wondered about that. Do you feel that connection and then all of a sudden it's time to, or you just understood that was kind of part of the process?
Yeah, it's a tough question. And it's something I think a lot of people, it's hard to grasp and it's hard to understand until you live that lifestyle where you need to eat. And I mean, we didn't butcher a lot of things on the farm. It was more the eggs. We had layers, so we'd collect eggs. And the cows we didn't have that for meat. They were kind of pets in a way. Is mostly we had a big garden full of lettuce and tomatoes and things like that. And then a big orchard full of fruits and cherries and other things.
But when it came time to take the animal out, somebody else would come butcher it. So it wasn't like you had to do that.
We did that a couple of years with some of the chickens. And I remember, yeah, it was, I don't know. It seemed a bit natural. It seemed a bit like, they had good lives and this is kind of what, they were meant for. And
yeah.
And we took care of them and yeah, it's a strange thing to explain. We had like a connection.
Yeah, I always wonder because I think nowadays, people just go to the grocery store, they pick out a packet of beef or meat. They don't even really relate to the fact that it was ever even a living animal. So zero judgment whatsoever about that. I just think people are so disconnected now, whereas you knew these animals and you understood, where they came from. And they sort of had one bad day. That theory of, animals should have a good life and just one bad day. But then this man came to your family who was always kind of, living a good sustenance lifestyle, but said, I can make you a lot more money. And you said it kind of coincided right when your parents sort of needed some more money to support your siblings growing up.
Yeah. I mean, we had a family of 7. So I had two sisters, 2 brothers, and, life was fine, when we're young. But I think they were kind of planning ahead and realizing, well, eventually we might need some more money. It might not be as acceptable to make all our kids' clothes when they get to high school. We were into sports, so it takes money to buy proper basketball shoes and travel to sporting events and go to different camps and things. And then a big motivation for them was they didn't want to go to college. They didn't go to college, but they really wanted to send their kids, help at least in some way to send their kids to college. That was a big dream of theirs. And they also were thinking about retirement. So how eventually could they possibly retire? And they only owned the acreage. So they were renting the pasture and some of the surrounding buildings. So it was kind of catching up to them. Well, they living with $100 in the bank isn't totally sustainable. And that's when they, knocked on the door and said, hey, like we have the plans. It looks like you have the land, you're hard workers, and we could build these 2 buildings holding 1,100 pigs each. And you'll make far more just from those 2 barns than you make slaving away at your day job for minimum wage. And, to my parents and to my dad, I mean, it seemed like a pretty good deal. And it also, at the time, this was one of the first CAFOs in Iowa. So there wasn't really anything to compare it to. There wasn't like they could go out and ask, hey, a neighbor, how does this working for you? All these things they're telling us, is that true? Like, how did it work out? It was really, a leap of faith that they had to take, just assuming that everything, that they would hold true to their word and everything would turn out as planned.
And what is a CAFOS? What does that mean? CAFOS?
So CAFO is a concentrated animal feeding operation. So it's a site where it's those massive sites where you have thousands of pigs or chickens or turkeys in a very confined, dense space. Ours is on the smaller side with two 1,100 buildings, 2,200 head each. But there are plenty out there that have, 5,000, 6,000, 10,000, 15,000 pigs, in one location.
Which blows my mind because, first of all, is that even farming anymore? When you think about what a huge difference that was from the type of farming your parents and you and your siblings were used to, is that even farming when you consider that style of raising animals?
It's totally different. A good label is factory farming because you do feel like you're in a factory. It's more of an assembly line where you have to do this and this. It's not individualized where you're, taking care of it's just so many. There's such a high number of pigs, and you lose autonomy too with factory farming, contract farming. You don't have that autonomy to make your own decisions. If you feel like you want to do things a certain way, you can't. It's in the contract. You have to do you're just contracted. There's specifications in there where in guidelines you have to follow, and you don't have a choice. So very, very different.
You give up your whole sort of sense of person, really, what you did and what your talent is. You hand it over really to these corporations who tell you what to do. I know that you said your family left to go camping. When you said, okay, we're going to sign this contract, they said, just you guys take off, come back in a couple weeks. And the second you guys drove back on your farm, it was so drastically different. Just give us a quick synopsis of what that was like.
Yeah. So vacation for us back then, every year we'd just go tent camping at a park 20 miles away. We left for a week, decided that's perfect timing. They'll be starting on the building of the barns. And the first thing we noticed when we got back was the plans were already changed. So there was this pretty big area of older trees that we would play in, we had forts and things in there, and they decided to tear down all of those trees. And so I vividly remember that moment when we're driving up and we're like, they weren't supposed to take down those trees. Why did they do that? And that was, I don't know, a sign of things to come, I think.
Heartbreaking. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you said that the sheds, are they called the sheds that they keep these animals in now? 1,100, did you say? 1,100 pigs then went into these? Okay. And how are they kept? How do you keep 1,100 pigs in a space like that? How big is this space? Do you know from memory?
Yeah. So it's 50 feet wide, 200 feet long. And so this was a wean to finish. It's called the wean to finish operation. So they would come in from a different site at about 30 pounds. And we were in charge of raising them from 30 pounds to market weight, which is about 280 or 300 pounds. And then we would load them up on the trucks and to take them to slaughter, basically. So that you'd get about almost 2 turns. You'd get almost 2 turns a year.
Okay.
Of that. So they grow. I mean, they grow fat. Yeah. They grow fast. They eat a lot of feed, and especially as time went on, just the different types of feed and the different things they were given, they would, the different genetic, the things they did with their genetics, they would grow very fast.
And being that confined with that many animals in 50 feet by 200 feet, how did they do in that environment? So you and your brothers and sisters would walk in. I assume you had to help care for them. And what's that like when you walk in and see them in that type of environment?
As a kid, I'll just be honest. It was a lot of work. It's the first thing. It's just it's not something you look forward to doing. Where a lot of other activities you look forward to doing. This was always kind of more of a dread of, okay, we have to get this done. We have to go down. There'd be part of it, half of the pens, they'd be separated into pens. So maybe, 25 or 30, it would depend. as they kind of grew, but half of it would be solid concrete. The other half was slats. And then the waste would need to go in the slats that got fed down to like a gravity fed PVC plumbing that would just go gravity fed into this open pit lagoon. So just this open air pond kind,
of the
picture
waste.
a pond just with waste.
Just
they
all
called
the
it
waste.
a lagoon, but it's just all the waste. So all the manure, or anything that the pigs were shot with, any chemicals, anything that was used would go there, would go in that lagoon.
And you're living next to that.
Would be,
that's right next to where
you're
you
living.
live.
Yeah, you're living next to that, and then it's pumped 2 times a year. So there's only one way to get out. There's only one thing to do. And I think that's maybe something that my parents didn't think a lot about, but there's really only one option. You have to pump that, use it as fertilizer. So you're kind of beholden to your neighbors who have row crops, so corn and soybeans, and they would use it as fertilizer. So they would pump it for free originally. At the end, it kind of, people used their leverage and started charging because they knew that we were under a barrel and there's nothing we could do. But they would pump that on the fields, and that's a big part of the cycle why there's been this proliferation of CAFOs. It's because a lot of people, they have thousands of acres, and they, spending money on fertilizer is expensive. So why not buy out this family farm, this acreage that has 40 acres around it or whatever? You could expand your operation, and they could tear down the acreage and then put up another CAFO. You could put up a big hog operation, and then you could receive that fertilizer, that free fertilizer, and then spread it on the fields.
So it's almost like the animals are like the byproduct of just getting the fertilizer. Like getting the waste is actually a commodity now, getting the animal waste.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's something a lot of people don't know and don't talk about is that fertilizer, like that manure, that waste is actually really valuable.
But how does that not spread? I mean, especially like as a former news journalist, I can't count how many times we went out and covered like an E. coli or a salmonella outbreak or a massive, pathogen outbreak from a lot of, animals being raised this way and their waste being kept this way. It just has so much bacteria and viruses and problems that then, our humans can get. How is it possible that we're spraying this on the crops and it's not perpetuating like a massive illness?
Well, it's not possible because it is a problem. It is happening. There is a reason why Iowa is one of the leading states in the country for new cancer rates. It's a massive problem. It's a massive health catastrophe. Just in Des Moines, just recently, I mean, we were on water restrictions. I live in Des Moines. The farm is about 40 minutes north of here. So I commute to the farm. Here in Des Moines, we were on water restrictions for weeks because even with the biggest nitrate removal system in the country and spending millions of dollars to operate that system, it couldn't keep up with the high nitrate levels in the water, in the drinking water. So we had we're on water or rationing water in Des Moines, which seems crazy to me that it's just, I've traveled a lot. I've been to these third world countries where the number one thing that pops out to you when you go to some of these places is, man, you can't drink the water. And now we're here in this supposedly, the richest country on earth, and you can't drink the tap water.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you have to really think about it. I mean, that's insane. We know exactly where it's coming from, why it's happening. We know it's because of the tile drainage, because it's not just over application and the water spreading it into the waterways, but the immense amount of excavation that's happened in Iowa specifically and in the Midwest and in corn and soybean country is digging tile, is laying tile. And so that water that comes down and that takes that any substance, any bacteria, anything that's in that waste, typically, it would have a long filtration process where you get a drop of rain would take decades to make it to the water, to the drinking water.
Right.
Now it takes literally an hour. It'll go down there in the tile and go right into the water.
And that's just because of the erosion from all of the chemicals and the pesticides and the waste and everything that has eroded the quality of the soil. And how to simplify that?
No, so picture it where typically water, comes down and it goes through the soil and goes through this, filtration process to get to the drinking the aquifer. The tile makes it so it doesn't get down there. It streamlines it. So it's a big pipe. Just picture a big pipe with holes, and it goes and then just
because
streamlined.
It's being fed. Okay.
It's being fed in all this intricate systems that all go to these streams and these rivers.
So this is really what I know. You went away to college, you left the farm, you went away and, got interested in this, especially in environmentalism and, more ecology. And that's where you sort of came back and said, this isn't going to sit well with me. And I always find in these conversations I have about animal welfare that even if people don't care about the animal or they don't mind that the food they're eating was tortured in order for them to eat it, they do care about the environment. So sometimes you can get people from different ways. Like, what is the thing that you're interested in? Do you want your kids to be exposed to this kind of E. coli or bacteria or poor drinking water, like you're saying, or not be able to live on a piece of land that's been so polluted that you can't even live there? There's multiple layers of damage that this kind of farming is doing. How did you feel about going back to it, or just knowing that that wasn't going to be something you could dedicate your life to?
I mean, I came at it from multiple kind of sides. One was I just developed this passion for sustainability and environmentalism. And so I moved to Des Moines and I joined a local nonprofit, Urban Ambassadors. And we were doing great work with sustainability initiatives in an urban environment. So we were creating Des Moines' first climate action and adaptation plan. We started this massive tree planting project. We were having, throwing networking events, speaking series. And I was just really proud of the work we were doing, the team that we had. It felt so rewarding. But then it was killing me that, some weekends I would go back to the family farm and I would still, occasionally have to help out with this operation that I didn't tell anybody about, that was kind of a secret, living my double life as this, most people didn't even know that I was, grew up on a farm. I think a lot of people, when I told them that, what? No way. So it bothered me, but it just felt like I was in a unique position where I saw this change that was possible that we're doing here in Des Moines. And I thought it was even more, in some ways, more realistic and definitely more important, that work that needed to be done in the agricultural sector and in rural America, rural Iowa. And I was just in that position where I thought, at least I should be trying to make a change here. And coincidentally, it was at the time where my parents didn't want to do that. Like, they were feeling that, they were understanding the environmental ramifications. They were understanding the negative health effects it had on people and on them. But it's something that's hard to get out of. I mean, they did that for 30 years. They had a contract. They were making, decent money from that. But they invested all that money in the equity of those barns. So what do you do? This whole investment that was kind of their retirement fund, that was almost half their current income. Do you just say, I don't want to do this anymore? I will just forego all of that and let these buildings rot. That's a tough thing to deal with.
Yeah. And what you say, Tanner, that there's so many farmers that find themselves in this position. They don't like the way that things have evolved. They don't like that this is how they're having to treat their animals or their land or the environmental impacts, but they're stuck. They're so stuck because so many of these huge factory farms are in debt or tied into a contract with these huge big ag businesses. So how do they escape? It seems so hopeless. How do you get out of it?
How you get out of it is just realize that change is possible and that there is so much infrastructure out there that could be retrofitted, that could be changed to a different business model. And not only can you do it just for environmental reasons or animal welfare reasons, you could make these changes and make it be profitable. You could create jobs in an area of rural America, rural Iowa, where jobs are on the decline year after year. Opportunity is, the loss of opportunity is happening just around the clock. There's population decline in every small town, every rural county. So you could kind of make the argument about the positive side of things, the positive change, and think about the younger generation of farmers. The average age of farmers in America right now it's getting up there. They're getting older, and the younger generation, they don't want to farm in the typical way, in the typical ways. And somebody like me, it's just, I really had an interest in farming, but I had no interest in row crops or CAFAs, but mushrooms. Yes.
That sounds great.
Sign me up.
Let's talk about some mushrooms. And that's, of course, where we bring in Megan. And I know that you kind of been stuck thinking about, how do I do this? And then you heard about this program, the Transformation, not transformation, but Transformation. Transformation, that Megan Hunter runs this for Mercy for Animals. And there's so many different examples of farmers who've done just this. Did you hear about her, or were you already kind of doing this, or you heard about them and then they gave you the structure?
I heard about Transformation from a fellow board member on Urban Ambassadors, the nonprofit I was leading. And because at the time I was trying to make this change, I was totally alone. And that could be an intimidating, overwhelming experience, going against the grain with your family, my brother's laughing at me, my parents are skeptical, my neighbors think it's a pipe dream, not possible, and then I heard about their organization, and right away, I literally just gave them a phone call. And that first phone call was just, it was a sigh of relief that, okay, so this isn't totally crazy what I'm trying to do. Like, there are others out there that think this is a good thing and this is possible. And just initially having that positive vibe and have somebody have your back and have just the simple conversations meant the world to me. Like, that's really what kept me going in those early stages, for sure.
That's so cool to hear. Who did you have to go to first? Because was it your parents that started the pigs, or was it their parents, or who did you have to go to first?
My parents. Yeah, it was my parents when I think I was 9 years old. And that's when they had that offer that they accepted. And then that's when they got their free labor from the kids. And, that's another factor too. Eventually the kids, we all obviously moved out of the house, and then it becomes a lot
on them.
It becomes a lot more on them. And then at the same time, during this time, there was just more and more of these operations. And the money actually became less, which makes sense, I suppose. Like, the money became less and less. So that the money they were getting paid when they ended their contract was less than 20 years, less than they were making 20 years previous.
Oh my gosh. So it went the opposite direction. It went the wrong way.
It went down. You think, it's just, most jobs and most things you do, you kind of assume you work really hard, you do a good job, and your pay increases with that, or just with, inflation.
Yeah.
But it was the opposite for them. They actually made less and less and less money because more of these went up.
So you came to them with this idea after hearing about the Transformation program, and then getting involved, which, of course, Megan, you run that. How does that work when you first get a phone call from anybody who's spent their entire lives and maybe a generation of their parents or grandparents doing one kind of agricultural business? It has got to be absolutely terrifying to think about doing anything else. It's all they know. So when you get those first phone calls, where do you start? How do you reassure them that there are options?
Yeah, absolutely. And generally, the way that farmers contact us is through our website contact form, and they just reach out to us. They give us a little bit of information about what's going on with their farm, and we invite them to schedule an intake call. And that's really a listening session for us where we can meet with them, and we just really want to hear and learn more about their story and understand where they're at. I generally do a lot of the intake calls, and there's so many different stories. The most recent one that I came across was there was a farmer who he and his brother inherited their farm from their dad after he passed away. And the father had a really good relationship with the integrator. They had won their tournament. They were growing broiler chickens. And when the father passed away, the sons assumed they can continue on with their contract. But they've actually been waitlisted by the company, and they've even been able to have I want to say it was one of the higher ups of the company, come visit their farm, check it out, see that everything was in good standing order, and they're still waitlisted. And so they're kind of in a place where they're like, what do we do? We have these empty barns. We don't know what to do. One brother's interested in continuing, and the other brother's like, what else can we do? And so really our role there is to learn and hear what's going on with them and then let them know what we can provide. So transformation, we can provide technical support if they enroll in our program. We can connect them to consultants. We can do some specialized market analyses and research just to help them make decisions and inform what they might want to grow. And then we also offer a research and innovation grant program. So if they want to do a pilot project where they're converting that space, that is something Tanner did as well. And so that is some funding that we provide that they can then convert their space to grow. But ultimately, it all starts with just that conversation and connecting and seeing if that is even the direction that they want to go.
Which is so cool. And I know Mercy for Animals has been really started as an animal advocacy group. But how did your organization figure out, we can't just encourage farmers to do something different. We can't just say, like, don't grow this, grow that. We actually have to provide some structure and some scale here. How did your organization arrive to acknowledging that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it all started with our founder, Leah Garces, who's also the president and CEO of Mercy for Animals. And it came out of her relationship with a farmer named Craig Watts out of North Carolina. And he grew broiler chickens, and he and Leah became friends and connected because he didn't feel good about the fact he saw the condition of the animals that he was raising, and he saw the way that they were being marketed by the integrator, and it didn't sit well with him, right? And so I believe there was other factors there as well, but he really didn't like the way that everything was going. He didn't agree with it. Didn't have the autonomy, didn't have the control over his operation, farm debt, all of those things that we hear. And so he and Leah he whistle blew on his integrator and on the industry. And I believe they were in the New York Times, if I remember correctly, but they were in some really big media. And just sharing his story and sharing what was going on. And lo and behold, that resonated with a lot of other farmers because not a lot of them are able to speak out if they are actively under contract because they may jeopardize their contract and there might be retaliation that happens there.
Is that true? So is that true, Tanner? You felt that as well? Like even if something's grossly...
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of pressure to not speak out about anything, not share any photos, film. I mean, nobody could enter the barn. And I always thought, if you're proud of what you're doing, if you're proud of your company and the way you run things, why are you trying to hide everything?
Yeah. And also public health wise, which is part of the reason why this podcast, we call it Know It All, is we feel that if people knew what was behind what they're eating, what's on their plate, would they support it? Is it in alignment with their values? Is this something you'd support in that this is what happens to the animal? This is what happens to the land. This is what happens to the farmer. And the fact that they can't speak out, even doing news stories I used to do, there's things I couldn't even get on the air because we were worried we'd get sued just for being a reporter covering the story. So it's very freeing to be able to talk about it now. And I so appreciate having both of your perspectives on either side. Do you find, Megan, when you talk to a farmer who's interested, are they leaving because they don't like the way that they have to farm animals in order to be able to survive and turn a profit? Or are they upset about the environmental part of it? Or is it about being like owned by a corporation that has taken away their voice?
Yeah, you listed a lot of them. There are a handful of reasons, and I know Tanner has spoken to a lot of them as well. The primary driver, though, when we look at the contract farming system, which is the way the majority of animals are grown in our food system in the U.S., we're talking chickens, we're talking hogs. That system is meant to keep farmers in debt. So when they initially build those buildings, they invest in that. I know Tanner spoke to that as well, but they have that initial investment, right? But what happens is those integrators will continue to ask them for upgrades, and in order for them to keep growing, keep their contracts coming, they have to do that. And so they get stuck in this loop of debt. And a lot of the farmers that have reached out to us have come to us with anywhere from a couple $100,000 to over $1 million in debt because of that system. I think it's also really important to highlight that I think it was the 2023, the median net income for poultry farmers was $4,818, and for hog farmers was $6,419. So these farmers are struggling within this system. So that is a big driver because they just want to get out of the loop. They don't want to have to keep going. However, there are other reasons that farmers may look into, transitioning. One of them is because their contracts are terminated for them for whatever reason. There's a lot of things that can go into that. And I think it was the end of 2023, beginning of 2024, Tyson specifically shut down a couple of poultry processing plants. There might have been a hog one, I don't recall. But one of them was in my state, actually. I live in Indiana. And when those poultry processing plants shut down, they talk about the number of workers that are obviously, affected by that, and that is unfortunate. But they don't actually talk about the number of farmers that were feeding into that system that are also affected. So we've seen an increase in farmers who will reach out to us once that happens. And some of them will say, it's devastating, but it's also a little bit of a relief because we've been thinking about transitioning there. Farmers speak to farmer autonomy, similarly to what Tanner has spoken about. I know that was a big one for Craig Watts that I spoke about earlier, who started it all with Leah. Again, coming back to the discrepancy between how the chickens are raised, how they're marketed. And then we also see folks like Tanner. We see generational transfers. So we see folks who they've seen how this industry has treated their parents, and they don't want to do that. They don't want to do row crops, and they don't want to do animals. So what are their options if they want to stay on their land, continue their traditions, and as Tanner has also spoken to, and also, be good stewards of the environment?
Yeah, not be part of this cycle that's, contributing to climate change and contributing to mass illness as you ship the product, and it's full of bacteria, and some of which can be deadly. So you guys talked. Did you know, Tanner, what you were going to grab onto? Were you like, okay, this is what I'm going to do? Or how did you decide what the product is going to be?
No, I had no idea. That's when we took kind of we leapt from that just casual phone calls to really getting some consulting advice and putting together some numbers, looking at different business models, looking at, microgreens or a whole host of different possibilities until we landed, we ran into mushrooms, and I had no idea about mushrooms. I rarely ate mushroom, had literally no clue. And I went down the mushroom rabbit hole, and where I still live today, because I am obsessed with mushrooms. I thought it was so fascinating to have something that is so versatile. Because there's so many different business models, there's so many different mission statements happening right here. Like wanting to bring back family farms and diversify the agricultural sector, but localize the food economy so we could, sell fresh oysters to grocery stores and restaurants and things like that. But also, be a profitable, we could expand, we could grow, we could be a profitable company that creates jobs, like I said, in a struggling rural Iowa. And we could bring on maybe some family members or some people from, some neighbors that want to get out of what they're doing or looking for things. And with making value added products and focusing on the health and wellness side of things, I just absolutely love. It's one of the best parts of my day is when we have testimonials. Somebody will call or email saying that they had a mushroom tincture, a lion's mane coffee or something. Yeah. And they felt the positive health benefit from it.
Which is amazing.
it just feels amazing. It feels amazing. And that's something that, for a long time I read about transformation. They paid for classes and, it got me as educated as possible on the subject. But ultimately, things are theoretical until you start doing them. And now we're actually cultivating these mushrooms, selling these products and to a national audience. And it's just so exciting how I still think it's just, I imagine the farm the way it used to be and just as a kid, and where we never travel, we would never even leave the state of Iowa. Now there's, somebody in Brooklyn who is like shows a picture wearing our hat or is like saying they love the lion's mane tincture. They take in their coffee like every morning. It's like, what? This is really happening.
Well, I want
This is
some
really
of that
happening.
because according to Instagram, my brain's going to keep getting foggier and foggier unless I start drinking some of this lion's mane stuff. So I think every woman on the planet I know is drinking some mushroom concoction in their coffee. How's it go, though, when you're going to get a beer downtown Des Moines and you're telling everyone there's got to be some social pressure, I can imagine, from the other big farmers or whatever. They're like, oh, you're growing mushrooms now? I mean, that sounds like a very Californian thing to do in the middle of Iowa. Do you get that social pushback?
I did initially, for sure. I mean, there was, a pretty decent amount of skepticism, negativity. It's a small town, small area, so people know me. It was, not too negative. It was more just making fun of me and laughing about it, like Tanner and his pipe dream, and this is not going to happen. And it's just so funny now that it's actually happening. I mean, literally, just a few weeks ago, I was in there and there was these guys, they sit at the same table. They're there, every Saturday night and, give me a hard time. They've been giving me a hard time for the last couple of years. And they approached me. They said, hey, Tanner, sit down here. So I just wanted to ask some questions about these mushrooms. So, that we got 5 barns. I mean, how? And they start asking me questions about it. And I'm like, you've been, giving me a hard time forever, but that's rewarding. I mean, this really is, this change on a large scale is really possible. I mean, there's so much infrastructure out there. There's so many family farms. There's so many people that are open to change once they see some success stories. Once they have just a little bit of help and a few resources that could really kick things off, I think the tide will change for sure.
And Megan, what does that look like in terms of like financial dollars? You're saying that some of these, poultry or pork farmers were making under $10,000 or the spread, not make it, but like that's the amount that they were bringing in. What's the spread look like as we get to like the bottom dollar? Is this profitable?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's something we're still working on, trialing with farms like Tanner's. And they're one of our demonstration hubs. So they are a much more built out, higher level, larger scale than most of the farmers that we work with. But the majority of the farmers that we do work with, when we do like a research and innovation grant, we grant them $15,000, and that is enough to even just get their space converted to have a pilot project that they can at least start growing something. And then from there, scale, diversify, and explore from there. I do want to point to our website. So a lot of the resources we created in the early days working with these farmers are some enterprise budgets, and they include conversion costs of how much it costs to convert specifically a poultry farm into a greenhouse. The Faaborgs are an example of a hog barn into specialty mushrooms, but it includes that cost. And then it looks at these different crops that you can grow in these greenhouses, and it includes, a debt service coverage ratio. So can they service their debt? How much are they going to make? And what that looks like. So I would point towards those, but as if you'll look at a lot of the examples of the farms we've worked with, a lot of them have chosen specialty mushrooms. We do have an enterprise budget for that one as well. And that is because those can grab the highest dollar per pound. And I would like to compare that to, for example, poultry farming. The average contract farmer gets about a quarter per chicken when they raise it. And kind of tying back into, that median net income we talked about. And so, for example, we have it's a dairy farmer in southern Indiana, again, where I live. And they had a small dairy farm, about 100 cows. They milked about 30 at a time. They were edged out of production, and she got into specialty mushrooms. And they used one of our research and innovation grants. They converted it. They started growing They did all of that last year, 2024. And one of the really cool things to see with them is they were able to build out in about 3 months, and they were already growing, so they had the knowledge there. And they were able to do their farmers market season from the spring to the fall, and they were able to secure about $18 a pound for mushrooms, which is wild. And it's really cool to see that because that is a little bit above. I think the enterprise budget we had projected specialty mushrooms, I think it was maybe across the board as well, at 16 something a pound, and they were able to secure a little bit higher than that. And that was southern Indiana, right across the border from Kentucky and Louisville, or in Indiana, but across the border from Louisville, so a bigger city. And it was just really exciting to see what they could secure with that. And we looked to that, and that was really promising and really exciting. We were able to actually meet them and go do a site visit at their farmers market this June. And they had told us that they'd already outsold what they did last year, which is really promising and, again, really exciting. And lion's mane was their main seller. Everybody was asking for lion's mane.
No, I got to get on board. I got to do it. So to sort of wrap things up in terms of a personal, I mean, I think this is all just incredible. And I think it's such enormous leaps of faith from the farms and the farmers. You've got a livelihood to take care of. You've got families to take care of. I can see why it's such a scary leap of faith, especially when you've been sort of owned and dictated by these huge corporations that appear to know what they're doing, but really it's shrouded in secrecy. They don't want the American public to know how things are being raised, what you're eating, what's getting sold to the grocery store, and what it takes. I mean, that is so shocking to me. It breaks my heart to think that so many of these farmers have had to transition to this. And their reward is debt. They're just in debt. In order to stay on this wheel, you just have to go into debt. That is a heartbreaking reality that I don't think many people understand. For you, Megan, what's it been like to see so many people? I know you have all the stories on the website. We'll definitely attach the website for other farmers to check it out so they can get in touch with you. What's been the most rewarding part to see farmers transition away from what they were doing?
Well, I had a really interesting experience, and I'll also just kind of contrast this with my former career because I think that was also really interesting. So I was a 911 emergency dispatcher. And as you can imagine, in that line of work, it feels very hopeless because you're just responding to things. You're not really preventing, even though it's really important work. So when I started my role, it was in 2023, January 2023, we were actually doing a farm tour visit of a lot of our North Carolina farms. I think we had 4 or 5 at the time that we were visiting. And I remember it was like 3 weeks into the job. I go in and I get to visit all these farmers, and we were also filming them. And so I got to hear all their stories, and I remember I cried at every single farm. And it was because of how sad their stories were, because of how heartbreaking it is. This was also something that was fairly new to me, understanding how farmers are harmed in the food system. I had the knowledge of how factory farming was harmful, to the animals, to consumers, and our health and the environment. I wasn't really familiar until I came into Leah's work and everything with Craig Watts and then all of Transformation's work. So going there in person, hearing their stories, hearing, how their integrators cut them off and how they were left with nothing and really had to scramble to figure out what to do. The thing that really stuck out to me was there was a through line of hope that the idea and the work that farm transitions bring, and the idea that they are sold, these buildings are good for one thing and one thing only, and we're here proving that wrong. You can use them as greenhouses. You can use them as specialty mushrooms. You can not go into debt. You can actually contribute to the resilience in your local and regional food systems. You can welcome your communities onto your farms and come visit. I know the Faaborgs have done that as a demonstration hub, but I would imagine they'd probably be doing that anyway because it's amazing work that they're doing. And just the through line of hope was the big thing that I noticed.
That's amazing. And can I just ask, because it's just been in the back of my head, can you just grow pot? Can you not just do like marijuana and that they know? I mean, I know Iowa probably not.
Not legal.
Not legal.
Not legal yet in Iowa.
Not in Iowa, but some
in many
states
it's not. Yeah. And I will say, actually, I can I can speak to that a little bit because one of the first crops that Transformation looked into was hemp farming. So similar vein, but different. And so one of the things we look at when we talk about farm transitions is there's so many, obstacles that come over. There's the farmer debt. They have to learn to farm and grow a new crop, all of those different things. And so there's a lot of hurdles, and we didn't want to put another hurdle, which we did come up and see with hemp, is that it isn't, it varies state to state. So it wasn't something that would be applicable, across the country. I know I live in Indiana. We're probably the last state that'll ever legalize anything anytime, So
Yeah.
it was one that it's like, this just isn't maybe viable for everybody. So when we look at something like microgreens, strawberries, fruits and vegetables, that's something that can grow, anybody can grow anywhere. And it's not adding like one extra leg or one extra obstacle.
That makes sense. Here in California, you go to get like your latte and they're like, do you want pot in that? So it's like, it's very, very different out here. It's in everything, cream and, like hand cream and what have you. Okay. So Tanner, same question for you as we wrap this up. How has this changed how you feel about yourself in the world and what you thought your future was going to have to be, and how you've been able to just have a superhuman leap of faith and how it's turned out for you? Does it give you an incredible sense of purpose, or what has this done for you personally?
It's been rewarding. I mean, it's tested my patience for sure. It's been a long road, many obstacles, many challenges, but to get through all of those obstacles and to get that positive reinforcement from transformation, but also just from all of these farmers and just people from around the country that, call in and just, like our product or just like, what we're doing. And then, but especially from farmers, the calls I get from farmers that want to do the same thing. It really gives me hope that there is change in an industry it's difficult to change. There are these systems put in place for a reason. I mean, there are laws and things that have been written to make the food system the way that it is. But, just like those rules and those laws were written, they could be unwritten, they could be adjusted, they could be changed. And it gives me hope also just in a broader sense. I mean, if you could change the ag system, you could change any system.
Those lobbyists.
That's what I feel like.
Yeah, those lobbyists,
Yeah,
I know they're tough and they're not out for our health. They're not out. They're just, I understand, they don't care about these outbreaks. I'm like, are we done? Didn't we just kill 4 million chickens or billion chickens? Like the poultry outbreak we just had was so massive, and we're just so used to it now. It just is white noise. And I wait for people to be more conscientious when they're shopping. And that is one thing too. A lot of the moms, main reason we're doing this podcast, we want to talk to the moms. They're the shoppers. They're buying the food most of the time. How can they support the right product when they're shopping? Like, do you have any advice? I know, because this can be kind of removed if you're not a farmer, say you're in Oregon or you're in Arizona and you're far from this. How can we support the right product?
So I would say that, farm transition programs like ours, they provide a path for farmers to reclaim their freedom from big ag and continue their life's work by growing crops to feed people. And so these farmers often begin by seeking hyper-local support through farmers markets, through community-supported agriculture, through local shops and restaurants. So this movement, the farm transition movement, is an opportunity for everybody to invest in a more plant-based food system and to help us strengthen our local and regional food networks. So not all farmers will have a website. The Faaborgs are amazing and have a website, and you can come visit their farm. But not all farms are to that point yet. So going to your farmer's market, or if you see local somewhere, supporting local when you can. But then also, getting to know your farmers, getting to know if they're a farm that's transitioned, I think is another one. And just remembering that together, through all of these things, we can create a more just, resilient, and sustainable food system for the farmers, for the animals, and for the environment.
Love it. I love it. And what is, Tanner, we will definitely link your website as well. But go ahead and just say it so we have it.
It's 1100farm.com. So 1100farm.com.
I love it.
And essentially the name, those were Murphy 1100 buildings, which held the 1100 head each. So I thought I kind of wanted to reclaim that name and that number as a reminder that change is possible, that positive change is possible, to always remember like where we came from and where we are now and where things could go.
Well, we certainly can't wait to watch what happens for you next. And if we want to look out for your mushrooms, if they're being sold all over the country, is there a way to identify which ones are yours? I want to look for your lion's mane and all that.
The easiest way is just to order off the website.
Got it.
So you can just go to 1100farm.com and order whatever you'd like, and we ship it out either the same day or the next day.
I love it. I'm on it. You do have a great website too. It tells your whole story, and your parents, who are adorable, by the way. Your parents are beautiful. Your mom and your dad. They're gorgeous. You have to tell, you have a beautiful family. Well, I so appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Megan. Thank you so much, Tanner. And I learned something on these every time. And this has just been a fascinating conversation. So thank you so much for making time. And I really appreciate it. Best of luck to both of you, and can't wait to see where you take the farm, Tanner.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks, Megan.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
We'll talk to you again
Appreciate
soon.
it.
Okay, now for our on a lighter note, this is just a sweet video that we came across. You know, Courtney, shelter dogs love better than fancy breeder dogs, right? Like they love harder.
Oh, they
better.
love harder than fancy breeder dogs. That sounds right.
Yeah.
I never made that distinction until you just said it, but that sounds right.
They do. They know, they've spent some time in the pokey. They know what it's like to be behind bars and how awful it is to not have a family. Do you have a dog?
I don't have a dog right now. I have a cat. But
Okay.
we'll probably get a dog. I'm waiting for my 2-year-old to have it dawn on her that she wants a dog before I go down that road.
Totally. You don't.
Yeah.
There's no need to rush that. You're still in the toddler phase. There's no need to double down on the work.
Right.
And cats are friendly when they keep to themselves. They've got their own business to tend to. So yeah, wait till you get a dog. But there's so many great dogs in the shelters, and it crushes me when people I know go get like a breeder dog or whatever, or like go pick up a dog at the airport. You know where that's coming from, right? It's coming from Ohio or Pennsylvania or Iowa. It's like a not factory farm dog, but what are they called? Puppy mills.
Yeah, puppy
Lots of
mills.
them, not all of them. I'm just saying some of them. So anyway, shelter dogs, I follow way too many shelter dog accounts. It keeps me up at night because there's so many great dogs. I will likely be a dog hoarder in my old age. You'll find me on the floor, Courtney, with like 600 dogs. But
Didn't
this
you just
dog
get dogs?
What's that?
Didn't you just get dogs?
I'm currently fostering dogs. I didn't adopt them. I just picked up 2 in LA yesterday just to make my life difficult. I didn't even
Peggy,
get
you're
them
gonna
locally.
be a foster fail.
I haven't been a foster fail yet, and I think
No,
it's because
okay.
if I fail, I know I'm out of luck for future fosters. So
I see. Okay, that's fair. Yep.
yes, and I send them back, and they're much more adoptable than when they were fearful and whatever. So we give them like a month of home life, and it really chills them out. So that's also something if people feel like they can't commit to a dog. Oh my gosh, be a foster. The shelters are so packed. We euthanize about 4 million dogs a year in the United States. 4 million dogs. So think about that. This dog in this video is adorable. You know, when everybody does the thing, it's like, are we all in, family? And everybody puts their hand in the middle and you put the thing on top and what have you. This dog they just adopted from the shelter just like caught on right away. And it's just the sweetest little dog you've ever seen. So this is on a lighter note, lightening things up, reminding people to be kind, love on animals, and enjoy. And we're so glad you joined us today for Know It All.
Yeah. And just find that link in the show notes.
I always forget that part.
Yeah.
Find the link in the show notes. Here's a little preview. Click on that link below, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
If you liked what you heard, please follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you really liked what you heard, please leave us a rating and a review. Know It All is a production of Peggy Bunker Media. Editing, producing, and recording is done by the team at Resonate Recordings. I'm Peggy Bunker.